The ancient Greeks, who staged the first formal Olympic Games in 776 BC, gave the world the idea of organized big-time sports events as entertainment for arenas full of spectators. More than that, they were the first culture in which people idolized their favorite athletic superstars to a level that even today's most fanatical sport fans might find extreme. The ancient Greeks may have loved sports because males grew up participating in them. The professor of Southern Utah University, David Land, notes, every Greek city had its own gymnasium where local males took off their clothes and competed in the nude at various sports, such as wrestling and foot races. The Greeks also simply loved to watch competitions. In addition to the Olympics every 4 years, they held games at other religious festivals. The Pythian Games for Apollo at Delphi, the Isthmian Games for Poseidon, and the Nemean Games, which honored Zeus. The Crown Games, as these competitions collectively were known, featured a range of events, from chariot races to track and field events and combat sports. The athletes who competed in these events most likely were well-to-do Greeks, who could afford to train instead of having to work for a living. If you wanted to compete in these Olympics, you had to show up at least a month early to train under the watch of the officials, who presumably would weed out anybody who wasn't up the level of competitions, Land says. The Greeks didn't have team sports, only individual competitions, and they didn't allow women to compete in events, or even in the case of married women to attend the games. Chariot races were one of the oldest Greek sports. Artistic evidence on ancient pottery suggests that the event dates back to the Mycenaean period, from 1600 to 1100 BC, and the poet Homer describes the chariot race held at the funeral of Patroclus in the Iliad. First included in the Olympics in 600 AD BC, drivers raced in both 4- and 2-horse chariot races. According to Miller, the race consisted of 12 laps around a hippodrome, or horse track, and then 12 times in the opposite direction. The actual length varied depending upon where the event was held. Chariot racing was an expensive sport to compete in, and the owners of the horses and chariots, who watched as drivers competed in their name, used the event to flaunt their wealth. Hippodromes didn't have a divider in the center of the oval. Head-on crashes between chariots and horse teams sometimes occurred, which made chariot racing an extremely dangerous sport. Kelly, or riders competing in horseback, was added to the Olympics in 684 BC, according to Miller's book. The race was about 1.2 kilometers in length. The jockeys, who were young boys and probably slaves, rode bareback, without stirrups, so they did have reins and whip to guide the horses. The Greeks loved foot races, particularly the stadion, which was named after an ancient unit of measurement and correspondent to the 200-meter sprint in modern track. From 776 to 726 BC, it was the only event at the Olympic Games. The Greeks later added the Delos, the equivalent of today's 400 meters event, as well as distance event the Delichos, which was between 7.5 and 9 kilometers, roughly similar to the 10,000 event that countless recreational runners now participate in each weekend. But the Greeks had one event that has no modern counterpart, the Hopatodromos, in which competitors emulated Greek infantry and ran wearing helmets and broad shin guards and carried shields. In ancient Greek-style wrestling, grapplers fought in a standing position, with the object of throwing the opponent to the ground. The concept of pinning an adversary's shoulders to the ground did not exist. Instead, wrestlers won a match by throwing an opponent 3 times. Another unique feature of the ancient event was that there were no weight classes. The most fearsome wrestler of ancient times was Milos of Croton, who in legend developed his great strength by lifting and carrying a newborn calf until it grew into a full-sized ox. The discus and javelin to modern field events date back to the ancient Greeks, but back then they weren't separate events. Instead, they were a part of the pentathlon, a 5-event combination that also included the long jump, running, and wrestling. The Greeks had lead or stone weights, called halteres, that some believe jumpers used in effort to propel themselves further during the competition. Southland believes that the weights were only used in training. Unlike modern boxing, the Greeks' version had no rounds and no time limit. Instead, boxers simply fought until one man was either unable to continue or admitted that he was beaten. Like wrestling, the Greek boxers competed in a single open division, and they wore thin leather thongs called hymantes around their knuckles and wrists, but no padded gloves. This sport, whose name means complete victory in ancient Greek, was a sort of unheld borrowed version of modern mixed martial arts. Contestants used some of the same techniques as modern MMA, including boxing punches, elbows, knee strikes, low kicks aimed at an opponent's legs, submission holds, and ground grappling. They also were allowed to hit or kick opponents in the groin, something that's not allowed in MMA. And unlike modern UFC fighters, they didn't wear gloves, which allowed them to use karate-style knife hand strikes. Only beating and gouging were outlawed. Ancient Greek athletes didn't earn anything comparable to the astronomical salaries that NBA and NFL players receive today. Thus, they did have an opportunity to win prizes. At the Panathenaic Games held to honor of Athens and Athena, the winner of a foot race got 200 large iron jars filled with olive oil. Thanks for attention and subscribe to get more videos. Just support me with your likes and comments.